Hello and welcome to part 2 of this crochet elephant tutorial. If you haven't already watched part 1, then make sure to go do that, but otherwise let's get straight into it. So now we're going to go ahead and make the head. So you're going to grab your primary color and your crochet hook. And for the first round, we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. Now for round 2, we are going to do 6 increases, which will take us up to 12 stitches. For round 3, we are going to do single crochet increase times by 6. This will take us up to 18 stitches. For round 4, we are going to do 2 single crochets and an increase times by 6. For round 5, we'll be doing 3 single crochets and an increase times by 6. Now we will be single crocheting for 4 rounds. So from round 6 to 9, we will just be single crocheting all the way round. So now for the next round, we're going to be making the hole that we will then crochet the trunk into later. So for the start of this round, we're going to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to skip 6 stitches. So here's stitch number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're going to skip all 6 of those. And we're going to go into the 7th stitch and single crochet into that. So as you can see, we've sort of made like a hole here, which is for the trunk later. And now we are going to finish off this round by doing 23 more single crochets, as that single crochet we just did into here is our 24th one. So just single crochet the rest of the round. For the next round, we are also just going to be single crocheting round. So seeing that we have the 4 chains first, just make sure you single crochet into the chains, not into the other side of the hole. So ignore where we skipped 6, we are just going into the chains above that. And we are just single crocheting around. For the following round, we are going to do 2 single crochets and a decrease times by 7, and this will take us down to 21 stitches. And now for the final round, we are going to do single crochet decrease times by 7, and this will take us down to 14 stitches. So this is what the elephant's head looks like right now. It obviously looks a bit weird. We haven't put safety eyes in yet, which we're not going to do until we have crocheted the trunk on. But right now we're going to leave a bit of a tail, as this is the tail that we will use to sew the head onto the body. And we're just going to pull through to finish off. So now we're going to grab our yarn once again, and we're going to be working into this hole here. So we're going to make a slip knot with a rather long tail, as we can use it to sew the holes shut later. And we're going to be working into these 10 stitches. So if we have the head the right way up, the first stitch that we want to work into is the first stitch that we skipped. So we skipped 6 stitches. We want to work into the first stitch that we skipped. So here is the very first stitch that we skipped, and I'm going to put my hook into that, and we're going to single crochet into that. Now the next stitch along we are also going to crochet into. So single crochet into the next stitch, the one after as well, the 5th stitch that we skipped, and the 6th stitch that we skipped. So this is what it looks like currently. And now we want to move on to where we did the chains. So we're sort of going round in a circle. So find the fourth chain that you did on this side. So my one's right here. You might have a little bit of a hole here, but you can sew it up later. And you can just put your hook into that chain and you're going to single crochet into that. And now you're going to single crochet into the third chain that you did. And the second chain. And the first chain. So now you've single crocheted 10 stitches. So that's going to be where we're working into, these 10 stitches. And we're going to crochet back into that first stitch we just crocheted into before to finish off the round. So that's the first round of the trunk done. I'm just going to put a stitch marker in. And now we are going to be single crocheting for 6 more rounds. So we're just going to be single crocheting around here 6 more times. This is what the trunk looks like currently. And now for the final round, you are just going to do 5 decreases. We're just going to leave a small tail for sewing up the end of the trunk. And we will finish off by pulling through. And we're going to grab our yarn needle. So we're going to sew in and out of the front loops only around this circle here to close it. So go into the first front loop only, out of the second front loop, into the third front loop, out of the fourth front loop, and into the fifth front loop. Then we pull tight, and that should close it up properly. I'm just going to bring the tail through. And now we need to use the tail from the slip knot to sew up any holes that are on either side of the trunk. So I'm just grabbing my yarn needle again. And I'm just going ahead and sewing up the 2 holes on the either side of the trunk. And once you're happy with that, you can just bring the tail to the inside. So now we need to put the safety eyes in. So the safety eyes are going to go on either side of the trunk in between rounds 9 and 10. And we're just going to go ahead and clip those in. And once you're happy with how it is stuffed, we can now move on to the sewing. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to sew the ears onto the side of the head. So I'm going to grab my first ear, And this is how I want it to be positioned. So just on the side, but towards the back of the head. So we're gonna grab our yarn needle and we're just gonna find the positioning that we want. Now I'm gonna sew right into that spot. And now I'm gonna sew back into the ear. And back into the head. And we're just going to repeat that process until this is securely sewn on. Once we are happy with how it's sewn on, we are just going to bring the tail to the back of the head, and then we can tie it up to the tail from the other ear in a moment. So this is what it looks like with the first ear sewn on. And now we're going to grab our other ear and sew that on as well. So we're going to sew this ear on the other side, just exactly how we did the first ear. So go ahead and sew your second ear on. So once you've sewn your second ear on, you just want to bring the tail to the back where the other tail is. And then you want to tie those two tails together. And then cut them off and poke them inside. And this is what it will look like once the two tails are sewn on. So now you're going to grab your body, as we're going to be sewing the head onto the body. So we've got our body right here, and we're going to be going around and sewing each stitch from the head into a stitch from the body. So we're going to put our head tail on our yarn needle, and our yarn tail from the head is coming off at this point, so we want to line it up with the body so that it's at the front. So our first stitch that I'm going to want to go into with the body is about here. We're just going to go across 2 stitches. And then we're going to go back into the head and across a stitch, into the body and across a stitch, into the head and across a stitch. And we're just going to keep doing that all the way round until the head is securely sewn onto the body. Once you're happy with how the body's sewn on, you can just bring the tail through to a random point and we can just cut it off. And this is what it will look like once the head's been sewn onto the body. So our last item to be sewn on is the arms. I'm just going to add a little bit of stuffing to the arms. And the arms are going to be sewn on in between the rounds where we sewed on the head to the body. So right in the middle there. So we're going to grab the tail for our first arm. And it might be a little bit tricky, but it's just below the ear here. So it's in this round right here. And we're just going to put our yarn needle through there and pull through. Then we're going to go into the other side of the arm. And then we're going to go into the body. And back into the arm. And we're just going to keep doing that until we are happy with how it's sewn on. And then we can bring the tail to a random point in the back of the body where we'll tie it up with the other arm's tail later. So this is what it looks like with the first arm sewn on. And now we're going to sew the second arm on. So we're just going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to find that round here in between the head and the body. And we're just going to bring our needle through. And we're going to sew it on just like we did with the other arm. And now we're going to bring that tail to the same point at the back. And we're just going to tie these two tails together and then cut them off. And this is the elephant completed. I really hope that you enjoyed creating your elephant. If you would like the written pattern, it's available in the link in the description on my Etsy. As well, I started a Patreon recently, so if you want to join the 1 cent club or the 2 cent club, you can get extra free patterns per month. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.